Hello, Nick here. We've created a way to automate the import settings for your models from Blender. This lets you affect all these sliders, the input boxes, the tick boxes, and the shader type on a per material basis. You can already import some of these maps, but I will go over that in another tutorial. For now, we'll just cover the import settings. Let's go to Blender. So I've just got a default cube. This could be your original objects. This is going to be on a per material basis, so these are individual. You'd need to set up each one that you wanted to affect. If you didn't want to change anything, just leave them as they are. It will come in as default. So you need to make sure you're in the Materials tab with your materials selected, and then at the very bottom is Custom Properties. We've got this button called New. If you press that, you get a property. You want to press the little cog icon, and for our very first, create a string. And this is going to say Sansar underscore material type. Press OK. And you get this input box. You need to put in the shader name here, but not the visible shader name that's available in this box. You need to use the system name. On the Sansar docs, I've created a shader lookup table. And this one covers all of our shaders, and it tells you the display name and the system name. This is the name that you want. So as you can see, we have the standard shader. It's called opaque single layer. Each one is different. Just make sure you're using the system name. So let's try and do this standard alpha mask one. We're going to copy that system name with Control C, and then back in Blender, where we put Sansar material type, I'm just going to paste that in there. What that's done is that's now going to default the shader type to the alpha mask one. The reason we need to do this first is if we try and import with these additional settings we're going to add and it's not available, they will just be ignored. So if we look at the shader lookup table page, at the very top, I've got a little image that covers the various types that we use. So we've got string, which is our shader name, and sliders with a single input box of floats. Any box that has more than one is a float 3, or maybe it could be a float 4. So it's expecting another number that you guys don't see. So the lookup table will tell you which one you need to use. And then additionally we have bool, which is boolean. And these are just tick boxes. We do have a fourth type called an integer. They're very rare. I think there's only 2 or 3 shaders that use them. So let's scroll down a bit. We have the table key. This just gives you a little bit of a rundown of what they are. And then let's go back to our alpha mask. Let's say we wanted to affect the tint on import. So we'll look for tint, which is the property we want to affect, and we'll get its system name. And I'll do Control C just to copy that. If we look at the type and range box, it tells us it's a float 3, and it's a range of 0 to 255. So back to Blender, we're going to press New, and we get another property, little cog icon, and this one was a float 3. So in Blender, that's float array. The number 3 refers to the array length. I think we do have a couple ones that are float 4. So you would just press the little arrow, and that gives you the 4th box that you need. But this one's float 3. So we want to do the property name, and that was Sansar underscore tint. You can type this in. Make sure there's no extra space on the end or anything silly. The capitals and the underscore are there. And this one's saying was the minimum and maximum we need to change, as it can go up to 255, and we can leave it at that. You don't need to worry about any of these other settings. Precision would remove these extra decimal points, but you don't need to, just you can leave it as is and press OK, and that's added a property. And that lets us just choose a new tint. Let's set this to something that's nice and easy to see. There we go. Now, if I was to export this, I'm going to just select my cube, file, export. You must use FBX. And as you can see, I've got a few different ones, but we'll just, we'll set number 6. The setting you need to pay the most attention to is the custom properties tick box. Make sure this is ticked, as this refers to these custom properties. So I'm using a selected object. I'm not going to worry about any other settings for now, and we'll just export that one. If I now go into Sansar and cancel out that one, this only affects the file that you import, so it does it each time you press browse, basically. We'll just bring that one in, and it makes it run through the little chain. So we'll just do the material settings, and as you can see now, it's set to standard alpha. And if we scroll right down to the bottom, it's set the tint for us, and that's pretty nice. That will save to the file. So anytime you import that FBX, it will automatically set standard to alpha, and it will automatically put this tint in for you. Let's now do one of these bools. We'll do the receive reflections one. We'll switch that off by using the import is on by default. So back to Blender, I'm going to add a new property, and you can add as many of these as you need to. Press a little cog. Let's look for Boolean, and we need the property name. So if we go back to the lookup table, receive reflections, there's the system name, and there's the type, which is bool. Let's just copy the system name, Control C, and in Blender, the property name, so in the cog, Boolean property name, Sansar receive reflections, and press OK. And then we can turn that little tick box off. Now, if we export this one, we've also got our tint on, don't forget. We'll export as FBX and a new one, and make sure custom properties is ticked. Export into Sansar. I'll have to cancel out that one and just press browse and bring the file in again, just so it runs through its little chain. Now it knows we're still on standard alpha. When we scroll down, the receive reflections is turned off and our tint is there. So the only other two settings that you need to really think about are these ones are floats, so they just are the single type. Let's affect something like UV scale, just so we can show that one. And back in Blender, we'll just press new. We get another property. Press our little cog icon, and this one's float, so this was by default for me. We need our property name. Back to the lookup table. UV scale, and there's the system name. Let's just copy that. And this one's float. Oh, this goes quite low. I'll leave it at 0 for the minimum, but it goes up to 100. So this is only just affecting what you can do in Blender. If you didn't really need to go up to the full 100 and you knew what you were going to do, you could just put it at that number. And then we just make sure we've got our property name. So that just stops our slider wouldn't be able to go lower than the 0 for the minimum. And then we'll just set this to something like 55. And that's that one. If the lookup table tells you it's an integer, that one's very rare, but that just means it's a whole number. Blender does have something for this. I will just show you that one as well. It's not on this shader though, so we won't be able to see that going into Sansar. I'll just demonstrate that one here. So we have integer, a minimum and maximum, which is what you set. And you would do your property name, of course. This one doesn't have one, so I will just leave that as it is for now. And this just gives you this box with the arrows, and you'd be able to select the solid numbers. You can use a float, like the UV scales one. You just need to make sure that you're using the whole numbers. And that should be it. Now, if we import this, it would ignore this property values. It doesn't recognize it. So we were just affecting the original float there, UV scale, and we'll export FBX. Let me make another one. Custom properties is on. Export into Sans. Let's just close that one and press browse to make sure we bring in our new one. Open our materials and let's have a quick little look. There's our UV scale at 55. Scroll down, our reflections are ticked off, and our tint is set in our standard alpha mask. If you want to do this to another material, as you can see, this is still the default standard. In Blender, you would just select your other material slot. As you can see, it's got its own set of custom properties, and you just press new and then add like you did before. And just make sure you set these up as you need to. Always remember your material type is your shader. That's the most important one to set. Anything you don't set is just defaulted as Sansar defaults. Once you're in game, you can change these anyway. They just are set during import, so they're not set in stone or anything like that. As you can see, I can just change them. Oops, went too high. There we go. As you can see, just change them. All the boxes still work. And you can change it. You can even change your shader. It will just keep them settings if they're transferable. If they're not, it will ignore them. A little bit of troubleshooting. If a setting didn't work, just make sure you pay attention to the type. Make sure you've copied it as it is with no extra space at the end. With the capital letters, it is case sensitive. And make sure you've used the system name for all your properties, including the shader. And I think that pretty much covers it. Any questions, let me know. I will link the shader documents in the comments, and we also have a written guide in your main shader setup, which is just down here, which covers everything as well. And I'll see you again next time.